This happened several weeks ago, and it sure creeped me the hell out. Something had happened to the plumbing in my apartment my boyfriend and I were currently living in. So we called a plumber, and he was scheduled to arrive at around 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. It was my day off, so I would be there most of the day, alone. Before I get any further in the story, I will tell you now that I have a Rottweiler and a Siamese cat. Alright, so it was around 8 in the morning when I hear several knocks on the door. I was not expecting anyone and was still in my pajamas at this point, but I went to check anyway. I looked through the peephole and saw a man with a large scruffy beard and a baseball cap standing there. I noticed he had a toolbox, so I opened the door a crack. "Hello?" I said awkwardly. "Hello, ma'am. I'm the plumber." He said this with a grin on his face. I didn't really question it before I let him in. Although he was hours early, I led him to the washroom with the problem, then went to change into something more appropriate. After I finished changing, I went to check up on the man, whose name I didn't even get yet, and found him in the front room. He was crouched over the dog bed where my cat was currently napping. This was off, and I knew it. I cleared my throat to notify him of my presence. He didn't even turn to look at me. "I want to pet your cat," he said a little too loudly. I was not comfortable, nor was I going to let this happen. "No. Could you please just go fix the plumbing?" I said firmly. "No. I want to pet your cat." I need to pet the cat." "I think that you should leave," I said. I was not dealing with his obsession with cats. He stood up and turned towards me. After a moment of him staring at me, his eyes became very wide. "You look like a cat. Can I pet you?" At this point, I was contemplating grabbing my purse, pulling out my pepper spray, and spraying this dude straight in the face. I was thoroughly disturbed and creeped out. "I'm going to ask you one more time to leave," I said loudly. At this point, my dog walked into the room, and although he couldn't hurt a fly, his appearance must have freaked the man out. And he left. He walked right out of the apartment. I locked the door behind him and looked out the peephole. He stood there for about 2 minutes before speed walking down the hall, toolbox in hand. I called up my boyfriend at work and told him everything. He came home early because he didn't want me alone, although I insisted I was fine. How this man even knew that we had called a plumber still gives me chills to this day.
Quick backstory. I'm 18, and I live in a lower middle class townhome complex with my divorced mom and my little brother. My mom was out of state for a week at the time, and my little brother was staying at our dad's house for the week. I don't drive, so there were no cars outside my house. An 18-year-old with the house to himself for a week, with a mom who was perfectly fine with me smoking weed in the house, and gave me permission to have a few friends over while she was gone. Every teen's dream growing up, right? Yeah, except it ended up a little different than that. The first day, I come home from a 10-hour shift at the gas station. I work a half a mile down the road from my house. I walk home, head into my basement and smoke a bowl, and then fall asleep with my cat. A few hours later, I wake up with an uneasy feeling. It's 1 a.m. and I hear footsteps upstairs. My cat is on my bed and my dog is at a dog daycare for the week. I hear drawers upstairs being opened and immediately grab my switchblade and call 911. They send a squad car out and I stay on the phone. I hear someone coming downstairs. With my bed just being in the basement, due to the bedroom essentially being the size of a closet, I'm the first thing they'll see when they come downstairs. I jump to my feet, drop my phone, and drew my switchblade. The door opens, the light turns on, and in walks a man around my age, wearing a backpack and holding a crowbar. He was around 5'10", 140 pounds, very scrawny and shirtless. And there I am, standing there with a mere 4-inch knife, locking eyes with a man I've never seen before, inside my house holding a crowbar. He jumped just as high as I did when he saw me. With a surge of foolish confidence, I point the knife towards him and told him to not step towards me. Funny, considering his crowbar was a good foot longer than my knife, he shouted, "What the fuck? Bro, we didn't think anyone was here. I'm not looking for a fight, man." I hear quick and heavy footsteps coming down and a voice saying, "Yo, what the fuck are you doing down here, man?" A second man emerges through the doorway, this one holding a pistol, and it's pointed at me once he notices me. His eyes light up, as do mine, as I realize who I'm looking at. An old elementary school friend that I had drifted out of contact with. I had some friends who started talking to him recently, but I heard that he turned into a recreational Xanax addict, and I didn't want to fuck with that, so I never bothered getting back in contact with them. Turns out that's exactly why they were robbing my seemingly empty house for Xanax money. "Josh?" he said in a questioning voice as he lowered the gun. "Fuck, dude, I don't even know what to say." At this point, the door slammed open and the police rushed into my house, eventually coming downstairs and arresting the two. It didn't even dawn on me until the cop that had stayed downstairs to talk to me jokingly mentioned that I had a bong on a desk next to my bed. Roughly an ounce of weed in the desk, and the basement had to have smelled pretty strongly. Luckily, the cop ended up being cool and just saying, "I honestly don't care. They need to just legalize it anyway. After what you've been through, you need a joint." And then with a laugh, "But I never said that to you."
When my mom was 12, she awoke home alone one morning. Her mom was at work and her dad was helping his brother with some home improvements. My mom's brother, who was 17, was Lord knows where. My mom's friend Becky, who was out of town at her grandfather's, called shortly after my mom woke up. There were 3 extensions in the house at the time. One in my grandparents' room, at one end of the house, one in the bathroom at the midpoint, and one in the kitchen at the opposite end from the bedrooms. She was talking on the kitchen line. My mom told Becky they'd missed her at church the previous Sunday, and then she heard a voice say, "Oh, sweet little church girls." Becky's grandfather had only one phone, and that wasn't him, so the voice was on my mom's line. She asked Becky if she was at her grandfather's, and when Becky said she was, my mom said she'd call her back. Then she called my grandfather and told him that someone was in the house. He told her, "You get out now." My mom whined that she was wearing only a t-shirt and her underwear, but my grandfather told her that it didn't matter. "Get out." However, my mom did not heed the advice and went back to the laundry hamper, which again was in the bathroom with another extension, and grabbed a pair of pants. Then she ran out of the house and across the street to the neighbors in the meantime. My grandfather called Mr. Bird, who lived directly next door, and asked him to watch the house. A short while later, my grandparents and my uncle all came flying into the driveway. My grandfather went into the house, but found no one. He realized that he hadn't seen his coin collection in the house when Mr. Bird came over and said that he'd seen a man run out of the back door and through the backyard into the woods. As far as she knows, they never caught the man or recovered the coins.
Just for some background, before I start the story, I'm a girl who stands about 5'4". This story took place one day when I was home alone at night because my parents had gone to grab some things for our house at one of those stores that run until midnight. After my parents had left, I started to watch some TV and eating the rest of what was left of dinner from earlier that night. Once I got really engrossed in the show, I completely forgot what was going on in the real world, so I was startled when I heard a knock on the door. Thinking it was my parents, whom I had decided to come home early, I went and looked through the peephole. What I saw, instead of my parents, was a man in his late 50s, maybe even early 60s. Now, I decided that I was going to be brave, so I called through the door and asked if I could help him. My voice is always a bit shaky when answering the door, or even when I'm answering the phone, so the man must have known I was a bit scared. He claimed that his phone had died and his wife would be very worried if he didn't call back, and if he could just use my phone for 1 second. There was a part of me that wanted to go run and hide, but I decided to act brave and pretend someone other than me was home. I called out to my dad, who of course wasn't even home, and said, "My dad will take care of it for you, sir." He hastily said, "Oh, never mind, I don't want to trouble you guys any further. I have about 2% on my phone. I'll make the call myself." My heart was still racing, but once again I pretended to call out to my mom and told her he didn't need the phone after all. After he had left, I made sure the doors were locked as tightly as possible and sat down to finish my show. Not even 10 minutes later, there was another knock on the door. This time, I was sure it was my parents. So I ran towards the door, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw an old woman around the same age as the man. Now, I thought it might have just been someone in my building my mom knew, so I called out and asked if she needed any help. After a short pause, the woman claimed that she had hurt her knee and if she could come in and get some ice. That's when I felt chills run down my body and I knew for sure that I wasn't going to let her in. Some of you might think I was overreacting, but something just seemed really off. So I told her I was going to call the cops. She screamed that I was a rude, ungrateful bitch and walked off. After the lady had left, I heard a car start up and take off at a relatively fast speed. Then after I had calmed down, I called my parents and told them the story, and they said that they would be home in 5 minutes. So to all of you, please be careful who you open the door for, and always question the sympathy stories they tell you.